You're listening to the Electronic Media Collective Podcast Network. Yeah, it's a mouthful. For more great shows like the one you're about to enjoy, visit electronicmediacollective.com. And now, our feature presentation.
In a world where film studios have pillaged every young adult novel, DC'd every comic book series, and Frankensteined every silver screen monster in search of the next movie mega franchise. Two nerds, two movies, one cinematic universe.
This is Jasper.
And this is Randy.
We watched two movies.
But you know what? Two nerds are not enough for these two movies. We needed a third. We needed to become the terrible three. So we're joined this episode by guest Matt D.
Howdy there, Pilgrim.
Hey, Matt. So Matt is, Matt is iconic in the halls of Grawlix. In Grawlix history, Matt is up there amongst, I don't know, the gods.
Is there a golden statue of me?
There should be. I mean, right now it's just pewter, but we'll upgrade it later.
I want platinum.
Matt has been a longtime listener to the Grawlix podcast. I'm assuming the Grawlix Cinematic Universe as well. You've been around longer than GCU's been around for sure. And but you are also a podcaster yourself. Do you want to tell the listeners a little bit about your podcast? You do two of them.
All right. Yes, I do. I do. Two podcasts. The first one is, of course, the one I do with my kids, and it is Comics with My Kids, where we take a look at a comic book that my son or daughter are reading and review it, and then just kind of give a little bit of, background to the comic book, and then you give it to suggestions for other kids to read. The other podcast is the one that is a section of my heart that I love so much, and that's TV shows. And, you ever wonder why are they remaking all these TV shows today of stuff from like the 70s and 80s? So I go back and I look at the 60s and I reboot TV shows with today's audience in mind with modern day actors, and I call it the 60s Reboot Podcast, which is funny because one of the movies we're doing today was made in the 60s. It's all about synergy.
It was, and I believe by the time this episode goes up, or very close to it, you will have an episode that if people enjoyed the movies we're going to be talking about tonight, they definitely should check out your upcoming episode, because you'll talk about Bonanza, which was a Western TV show.
Bonanza.
Yep. Yeah, speaking of iconic Western theme songs and stuff. But 60s Reboot is a lot of fun because it touches on similar elements that we do here. You're much more informative, though. Like, I appreciate you do kind of a deep dive into like what these shows were, who was in it, stuff like that. And then basically you write fan fiction based on it. Fantasy, like modern cast and stuff like that. So it's a lot of fun.
If you're interested in hearing the 60s Reboot Podcast, check out my latest episode at emcpod.net/60s Reboot. That's 60S Reboot.
All right, so without further bearing the lead, we are talking this episode. We're pretty much about done with season Tarantino. After today's episode, we'll have one more movie to discuss. That'll be a special episode, our special season finale. But now we're up to The Hateful Eight. And so we paired that with a movie that makes sense in a very numerical way, The Magnificent Seven from 1960. Now, Matt, I had invited you to, basically join whatever episode you wanted, but I threw out Django and Wild Wild West, and you declined and said you'd rather do this one. So why would you rather do Hateful Eight than Django?
Mostly it had to do with scheduling, but it was also like a cornucopia of things because not only was it scheduling, but also because I'm probably going to get yelled at, but I really didn't care for the Wild Wild West.
That's the greatest movie. No, I get you.
Sacrilege. How dare you?
And I mean, I was just out of high school when that movie came out, and it didn't really pull me in. But I love the TV show.
I was going to say that's possibly our biggest missed opportunity, was not tying into 60s reboot with the Wild Wild West TV show.
Right. Had I thought a little more about it, I probably should have just said, well, work it out. But nope, I decided to go because I like the Hateful Eight. I mean, and I probably tried watching Django Unchained like maybe 3 or 4 times, and I kept falling asleep about halfway through.
Really?
Not because of the movie, but just because of the timing that I would watch the movie. And every time I look at Jamie Foxx, I can't help but think of him from In Living Color. I hate to say it, but
no, I get it. Like, and it's because of his early comedic stuff. Like, I have that impression of him too. But Django is a movie where it doesn't really impact it for me. But yeah, no, I get it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not complaining. You're here now, and I just thought it was funny. I thought maybe it was a Django Hateful Eight specific thing. You had a preference over one over the other, but I should have assumed. Maybe it's Wild Wild West. No. It couldn't have been that. So you actually recommended Magnificent Seven. I kind of threw it out to you if you had any suggestions. And initially you threw this out. Then you're like, well, maybe we should do Seven Samurai. So initially that's what we were going to do until I was like, I don't know how we're going to connect these two movies. So let's do Magnificent Seven instead.
Yeah. And honestly, I was thinking about it because I like the Magnificent Seven. I like the Seven Samurai. I like Akira Kurosawa. And I thought, I got to find a way. I know I'll find a way to tie samurais into cowboys. How does that not sound awesome? A cowboy, samurai?
It does sound awesome. I mean, I'll give you that. Like, it would have been pretty cool. But logistically, I guess we could have went sci-fi with it. But I'm like, technically the settings are separated by oceans and hundreds of years. I don't know how to do this. Although nobody in America knows like the time frame of when samurais were kicking around, so nobody would have complained. Plus, nobody would have complained anyway. But still, okay. So let's go ahead and kick into these reviews here, and then of course we'll do our cinematic universe. All right. So first, we're going to talk about the Magnificent Seven from 2000. No, I'm kidding. Yeah. Jasper,
Don't you do that.
I want
you do that.
I want to hear, dude. I'm actually okay. Let me do this intro, then we'll get into this because I'm kind of glad that mistake was made because I'm curious to see how they compare. The Magnificent Seven from 1960. Synopsis: an oppressed Mexican peasant village hires 7 gunfighters to help defend their homes. This was directed by John Sturgis, screenplay by William Roberts, and there's also several uncredited screen writers, including basically everybody who had a hand in Seven Samurai. This is basically the American remake of Seven Samurai. Starring Yul Brynner.
Yul Brynner.
Did we decide it was Eli Wallach or Wallace? It's got an H. Eli Wallach, Steve McQueen, Charles Bronson, Robert Vaughn. Oh, where's the other people? I know there's a few other people worth mentioning. Brad Dexter, James Coburn. That's one of them for sure. And several people. There's lots of people. At least 7. Okay, so the Magnificent Seven. I do want to actually start with Jasper on this one because he had an experience here. So Jasper, I didn't specify when I told you we're going to watch the Magnificent Seven. And as I'm watching this movie,
Yep.
a thought occurred to me, and I'm like, no, he wouldn't watch the remake, would he? Oh, I bet he might. He might. And it turns out you did.
Mm-hmm. 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 Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, however, you did then this evening, right up till like 30 minutes ago, watch the 1960 version. Mm-hmm. Had you ever seen this? Had you ever seen either film before? And what did you think? How did it, like, what are your impressions?
Well, I can see what you hit the problems you had with the remake, but I had seen the remake before.
Okay.
But I have never seen this one before.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll continue going around the circle, but I do want to come back to, at some point, Jasper, don't forget, I do want to kind of get your opinion on how the original and the remake kind of contrast and compare, because that's something we don't really do that often on the show. All right, Matt, had you seen The Magnificent Seven before, and what are your thoughts? What are your initial thoughts on it?
Yes, I had seen The Magnificent Seven before, and it was actually the second movie I seen with Yul Brynner. For me, it's like walking down nostalgia, because my grandmother was a big Western fan. She would watch Bonanza and Magnificent Seven and every John Wayne movie possibly made. So watching it, it kind of brought me back, and there's a lot of really cool actors that I saw later on in life as they got older. But yes, I have seen it before, and it was kind of nice to watch it again, because there's some stuff that that you kind of forget. The memory kind of cheats, and it's like, wasn't that line in there about badges? Oh no, that was something different. So it was kind of neat to come back and kind of refresh my mind as to the Magnificent Seven, and maybe I'm just older than I appear, but I've always been a big Steve McQueen fan. And, The Magnificent Seven was one of those ones that he was part of, and he was just becoming a big time star. And so there was a lot of, not really headbutting, but him and Yul Brynner, they were always trying to show each other up.
Okay,
kind of
sure.
Show
just
who was the better actor.
Competitive bravado BS, Yeah.
Yes, yeah. I learned a little background information about it because I did a deep dive history into Steve McQueen several years ago, and I ended up watching a lot of documentaries about him. And so, yeah, I'm a film nerd.
A film nerd? Whoa.
Yes.
You don't belong here. Okay, so Magnificent Seven. I know I've seen parts of this, for sure. I don't think I've ever sat through the whole thing start to finish. This is definitely the kind of movie that I recall my dad watching, especially. My dad had the biggest man crush on Steve McQueen, but, my dad was definitely that age, like Steve McQueen. And I agree, Steve McQueen was pretty cool. But, for a certain generation, Steve McQueen was the coolest. But also, this is very much the kind of Western that'd be on at my grandpa's house, 24/7, So I'm kind of torn on it, because in a way, that's kind of a con for me, just because, it is that old golden age Hollywood style filmmaking. It's a little cheesy. The score is a whole thing, but the score is iconic and it's very recognizable. But for me, that's also a detriment because I just associate it with every movie that parodied or every cheesy spoof on Westerns that used a similar, if not the exact same score. It's very recognizable, but that's not the movie's fault. But that said, yeah, I enjoyed this. I watched Seven Samurai, which this is, like I said, this is pretty much the American remake of that. Not pretty much. This is the Ring to Seven Samurai's reboot. So I had a hard time not comparing. So I didn't. I compared it through the whole thing. And honestly, this is a fairly accurate remake. But being that it's through that weird 1960s Hollywood filter, the very Technicolor filter, I feel like the story itself loses a little something. It loses some of its edge for sure. But, I enjoyed it. I did enjoy it. It's a classic. I can see why it's a classic. And the story it's based on is good. Some of the more fun aspects of the story do come through. I enjoyed the recruiting scene, which goes, the whole I don't know, what would that be? First act, the later half of the first act or so, where they're recruiting the Magnificent Seven. There's a lot of fun there. It's pretty interesting. So yeah, overall, I enjoyed it.
I have to say, I'm a big fan of the getting the team together scenes in a movie. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was neat how each time, because Steve McQueen's character Vin says to Chris Adams' character, he holds up his hands, shows 2, and then later on it shows 3, and it's definitely kind of cool how they kind of bring it all together like that.
Yeah, it's kind of cheeseball, but it's still fun and entertaining. And those two, even Yul Brynner has a really. I was telling Matt before, maybe it was during the pre-show. So Yul Brynner, he died, a long time ago, fairly young. Although he doesn't, I don't know how old he was because he doesn't look young. Maybe he wasn't that young. But the thing is, though, with Yul Brynner, I recognize him primarily from Westworld, the original movie, which he got because he, was a Western guy. Yul Brynner is like, he's a cowboy, but he's a robot cowboy. He's going to kill everyone. So, like, that's how I know Yul Brynner as the robot murderous cowboy in black from Westworld. And, spoilers. So it was weird watching this with that in mind because he's, like, so nice. He's, like, the friendliest dude in this movie. And I am interested to hear that trivia you were talking about, Matt, because I like Steve McQueen and Yul Brynner's chemistry in this. They're just, like, for whatever reason, the two guys that, like, randomly come together and they're just, like, instantly friends. They give each other the approving look, and, like, when somebody else does something, they kind of look at each other and chuckle a little bit, that kind of thing. I think they have good chemistry. And, man, Steve McQueen is just pure charm. Like, you don't have to give him any dialogue. He just can stand there in the scene, and he's just pure charm. You
want me to go ahead and tell you the little trivia that I learned?
Yeah, go ahead. So what's this story? Did they, like, butt heads a bit?
A little bit. They both had rather large egos. They both wanted to be the top billed on the movie, and both had really great agents, and they were trying to negotiate to be the top billed actor. And that's why if you look at the credits, it says starring, and then it was like a whole plethora of people. Nobody really took the big top name because they kind of split it between him and Steve McQueen, and they were always trying to do a better performance, which I think is really kind of shows in the show. In the fact that they were both doing different things to try to, like the big thing was the opening sequence with the funeral march with the hearse, and how they take the hearse from the funeral parlor all the way up to the top of the hill where Boot Hill is at. So Yul Brynner goes on the stagecoach first, and he's, in position, and he checks his gun and everything, and then Steve McQueen shows up and he says he'll help out. And as they're sitting on the wagon, they're each doing little things as the wagon's going. Like Steve McQueen will pick up a scatter shots and he'll shake it next to his ear to hear it, and he'll put it in the gun. He's kind of playing with the gun, and then Yul Brynner's kind of doing a little thing to the side, trying to like show that, hey, I know more than you, kind of thing. So there's like these little things they were doing on the stagecoach. Like you would see two guys at a thing trying to flex their muscles. Like, oh, I'm the top dog. I'm gonna flex my muscle here. I'm gonna
each of them trying to
this gun.
Each of them trying to steal the scene.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
and then all of a sudden, the scene goes to a more actiony scene, and then that's when it all kicks in, and they do their top performance of just, it all kind of like comes together, and then that's when the characters kind of understand that, hey, I'm with a guy that knows what he's doing. And the actors kind of fell in that same role. Like, oh, hey, we really appreciate each other's performances. So, yeah, the whole scene with them on the hearse was just the pivotal moment that they both kind of got into a relaxed position with each other as actors as well as characters.
Okay, interesting. And you're right. Like, from a story point of view, that's their introduction into the movie, but to each other. Did either of you guys find that whole like scene kind of ridiculous though? Like just the excitement of it. Like I did like the ride up there where they're tense. I like the tension, but the weird celebration. It's like, well, all those racists are still there. Like you didn't like save the town from racism. They're still there.
Hey, that was 1960s racism that they tackled. That's the best they could do.
I guess when it comes to racism, you just appreciate the momentary victory. So,
yay, we got the dead body of the engine up here.
Exactly. Oh man.
Oh, was that? Did I say engine? Oh, I meant to say Native American.
Well, that's what they would have said. So, Jasper, what did you think of this cast? Because I know you're not super up on a lot of.
I'm a huge fan of Yul Brynner.
Really?
It's one of my Of course, although I've seen this not really willingly. I've seen the 10 Commandments with him in it.
Okay, sure.
At least 26 times.
Dude, they run that. They run that on TV all the time, and your family's kind of religious, right? Did they like make you watch it, or
not the family I live with? My dad.
Okay.
Every weekend we went out to see him. We basically had to watch this movie because he didn't really want to watch this around the house. So we sat in front of the TV and watched Ten Commandments. I liked him in that movie, especially because when he says, "So it is written, so shall it be done," and The King and I, and he, like I said, he's just, I like how he kind of commands the scene. Because, like, talking about this movie and the remake, I feel like him and Denzel kind of have that same look about them when they do movies. You know,
is that who plays the character in Magnificent Seven?
I think they're supposed to be.
Okay.
Yeah. Denzel is the Yul Brynner character, although I don't think he uses the name Chris Adams. And then, of course, Chris Pratt is the Steve McQueen character.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, they both have that kind of look about them.
Oh, he's Russian-born American actor. Okay, maybe that's the accent. He's got a very unique voice, Yul Brynner does.
Yeah, it's almost like Eastern European.
Yeah. And one of the characters even says something about, you don't speak well, but blah, 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 blah. And that's really when I started to like key into like, well, what is that accent?
That's why I was kind of laugh about the Ten Commandments, because he does not sound Egyptian at all.
That reminds me. So I was glad to see there were actually like Mexican and Hispanic actors in this movie, and not just a bunch of white people doing Mexican face. Is that a thing?
Oh, you mean like Charlton Heston doing a Mexican?
Yeah,
or
exactly.
Charlton Heston doing an Egyptian?
Exactly. Or why they cast Charlton Heston in basically anything? It doesn't matter if their character's white or not. However, I get why they did it, especially in an older Hollywood movie, but when you have scenes where it's nothing but Mexican characters all speaking together and they're speaking English, takes me out of it every time. It's like, that doesn't make sense. Why are they doing that? Also, there are several of those actors who sound more American than I do. Like, they speak some amazingly just straight up. Some of them kind of blew my mind. I was like, wait. Like, I appreciate that they're not doing the, like, they're not all, the over the top, like, "Oui, senor," like that, the kind of offensive racist accent, but like,
everybody speak Gonzalez.
Dude, some of them are like, you sound whiter than I do. Like, what's this? Sorry, that was something that like it struck me while watching.
Hey, senor, I'm from Mexico. We talk like this. Let me my boys come up here from Mexico, and we'll hire you to come down. And
you want an enchilada?
We got chimichangas, man.
He's starting to sound like a surfer, dude.
Sorry, I go from New York to Keanu pretty quick.
Charles Bronson is in this. This is he's one of the other like actors that I most well know out of this cast, and again, this is something I was saying in the pre-show, but like, it's so weird to see a young Charles Bronson, because for one, he still doesn't look young in this, but he is stacked. Like, I'm used to an older, smaller, gun-wielding, well, I guess he wields a gun in this too, but your Death Wish Charles Bronson, the older 70s movies Charles Bronson. And so when I pictured him younger, I think I always thought he was kind of like just a smaller guy, kind of a skinny, scraggly guy. Dude, the guy is a monster. He's like, he's the mountain. He's huge.
If they did the MCU Avengers in the 60s, I think he would be Captain America. Because I mean, you mentioned it in the pre-show, his intro was he was chopping wood.
He was. You're right. All it was missing is he just needed to like lift the last log up and tear it apart with his bare hands. Yeah.
And there you go. You got your MCU for this episode.
Yay! We needed it. We freaking needed it. I'm just joking.
Well, this whole movie is like this is the Avengers. This is the coming together of all these, you got the knife guy who can throw a knife faster than a person can draw a gun. Unfortunately, he never uses that during the like big action scenes, but still.
But we'll forgive it this one time.
Speaking of the knife wielding guy who was, his name suddenly slips my mind.
I know, that's the one. I keep losing track of his name too. It's here, let me look.
Coburn.
James Coburn.
I didn't realize how skinny and tall he is.
He's such a string bean.
I mean, I look at him like, okay, well, I'm used to seeing James Colburn as, the old man from like the spy films and the old man in this and the old man in that, and here he is young and skinny. I'm like, he was that skinny? He's like David Tennant skinny.
I'd say, yeah, for sure. At least David Tennant skinny. No, you're right. I when I think of him, I think of like, he seems kind of barrel chested as he gets older. And that is not this guy at all.
No.
His character was fun too. It was interesting. Like I had mentioned, I had a hard time not comparing it to Seven Samurai. And one of the things that I feel like this lacks a little bit is some of the kind of the character development of some of these characters. And, it's kind of Hollywoodized, but it does pretty well at establishing what most of these characters are. Of course, it's a little flimsy. A lot of them are kind of one-sided, but it establishes a lot of these characters pretty quickly by doing very little. I mean, if you think about Yul Brynner and Steve Martin. Wow, this would have been a different movie.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The Magnificent Seven Amigos.
Oh, Lord.
That's what... Oh, man, we should have saved this for that. It does develop their characters as the movie goes along. Like Yul Brynner and Steve McQueen, like, they're both sly, kind of friendly dudes, but also, like, they're hired guns, so they're not necessarily good dudes, but you're kind of like, well, what's his stake in this? Eventually, they do kind of dive into that a little bit.
Well, Jasper, this was the first time you actually sat through it all, right?
Yep.
What did you think of the gun shootout scenes and the portrayal of that?
I don't think they were too bad. Of course, the period in which this is, of course, filmed, but I mean, I don't think they were too bad.
I mean, it probably doesn't help that you came fresh off of watching the remake before watching this one.
Yeah.
I don't believe I've seen the remake of this, but I've got to imagine they amped up the gunfights a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they actually use like squibs and blood packs and
blood.
Yeah, because it is, and I don't want to step on Jasper's toes, but it is funny just to go from watching something like the remake to this 1960s, censored kind of fighting. Where you hear the gunshot, you see the gun smoke come out, and then the guy's laying on the ground, and in the next scene, he's got blood on him.
Right.
I think in my mind, I always kind of confused this with the Dirty Dozen. So when I went into this, I was a little disappointed. I was like, oh, this is going to be kind of squeaky clean, super Hollywood. Whereas the Dirty Dozen, if I'm thinking correctly, is a little later, and that's Sam Peckinpah, I think. But that's kind of when Hollywood Westerns started to get like really, really violent, So in my mind, I always switched that and this around. So I was a little disappointed going into this, and I was like, oh, I was hoping for a bit of ultra violence. But interestingly, and it makes sense, Seven Samurai, it just comes across as so much more brutal. I mean, obviously, because you're talking sword fights versus gunfights. Sword fights are going to be a little bit more physically damaging, but the scope of this feels smaller, even though it's really not. Like, and then compared to like Seven Samurai, I remember, and maybe it's just kind of the general pacing of Seven Samurai. It's everything in that movie is much more drawn out, but it seems like it felt like the battle in Seven Samurai went on for days, and it doesn't seem as desperate. The scenario doesn't seem as desperate in this. Before the town basically gives up. I wanted to smack all the farmers, though, of course, but that's kind of the point, right? Like, they're supposed to be frustrating. I wanted to smack the crap out of them, especially at the end. I'm like, you guys basically won. Stop it.
Honestly, I think the comparison between the Seven Samurai and a gunfight, we're talking like what 10, 15 years between the two when they were shot. But the Seven Samurai, it seemed more like a dance with the fighting. You can get more. They didn't have like handy cams like they do now, but you definitely get more into it.
Yeah.
bring you into the tension of trying to fight somebody with a sword. Whereas, gunshot, you just shoot a guy on a horse and you see the rope pull him off. Oh, I mean the blast of the shot to take him off his horse, not a rope.
Not a rope. What are you talking about? You're breaking the illusion. I did appreciate those stunts, though. Boom, yank him back, and I that's a good effect. I feel like that gives the wound impact, but a lot of it is the classic like gunshot, and then they're just like, ooh, and, like huddle over and fall off their horse or something. That said, anytime horses are in a movie, especially older movies, it just looks so dangerous all the time. They just, I get that they're used to like, it's people know how to handle horses, but man, it always makes me so nervous because, God, those are such big animals.
Yes, and they're heavy.
Yeah. It seems so dangerous. All right. Well, hey, Jasper, do you have any other, like, between the two, since I didn't specify and you ended up having to watch both, I feel like I know the answer, but which one did you prefer?
Well, I'm a bigger fan of Denzel, and of course you probably knew I was going to go for that. But, I mean, they both have their thing, and I think they both should be respected. But, I mean...
Okay.
Usually in the sense of remakes, remakes never do as good as say, the original movie, because everybody loves that movie. And then I think that helps, or not helps with the mindset when you watch a remake. It's just like, this is going to suck,
So, okay, could you point to either something the original does better than the remake, or something in the original that really drug it down for you compared to the remake?
I don't think the original is as in the acting is as heavy-handed as the new one. So that would be my only really big comparison. It's Denzel was really just Denzel, cowboy Denzel. And it's much more like the intimidation factor, and not really just trying to get like the team together. You know what I'm saying? Okay,
interesting. Okay, do we want to roll into ratings and final thoughts?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, we'll start. Matt, we'll start with you since you're a guest. What are your final thoughts, and what would you give this out of 5 stars?
Well, this, of course, is a classic Western. This was back when, I wouldn't say Hollywood was in its infancy, but more like when Hollywood was a toddler going around leaving crappy diapers all over the place. I would have to say that I really like the movie. I have to pay it a lot of respect. I like Steve McQueen. So I would give it 4 out of 5 stars.
Okay. And how about you, Jasper?
I'm going to go, I'm stuck between 3 and 3.5. I want to say 3.5.
Okay.
Kind of the same thing. I'm a big fan of Yul Brynner. And I respect Steve McQueen, too, because I heard that name a lot when I was a kid. Because, of course, my parents watched a lot of their movies. But yeah, I'd say 3.5.
3.5? Okay. I'm going to say, and I think for a lot of people this would be low, but I'm going to say 3. I think it's a good movie. I think it does a lot of things right. I think it's a pretty accurate remake, and as far as remakes itself goes, being a remake of Seven Samurai, taking the story from a samurai movie and making it a Western, I think is actually pretty clever. The little Mexican town of farmers, I like that idea. I think that's a clever way to relocate that story, and I get why this would be kind of an American Western classic, and the cast is pretty amazing. Now that said, I realize it's kind of personal biases, but there's several things that kind of drug this movie down for me. The Golden Age kind of Hollywood style is a con for me. It's kind of cheesy when it comes to Westerns. This is kind of the reason, not this movie, but that kind of movie is kind of the reason I never really liked Westerns when I was a kid. More of a, give me a spaghetti Western. Give me something kind of dirty, something grungy, because the West would have been just disgusting and violent. So it's not really, I have that kind of just taste bias. And I realized that the Seven Samurai type story existed before Seven Samurai. It's a classic story, but I couldn't help but kind of compare while watching this. There's just elements of it that just don't really hold up compared to my memories of Seven Samurai. And some of the characters were super cheese, like the guy who like just didn't get that there wasn't like some hidden gold or something, you know?
Oh god, yeah.
Which we didn't even touch on, but that's fine. We don't have to. That's pretty much his character. He's very one-sided. So yeah, solid 3 stars. I realize that's going to be low for a lot of people, but with my biases, that's what I got to go with. I know I'm long-winded on everything, guys. I apologize.
It's fine.
I am a podcaster. This is my craft.
I actually cut mine down a little bit because I got lost halfway through talking.
I tend to do that a lot. All right, from the relatively clean and family-friendly-ish world of Golden Age Hollywood Westerns to the Hateful Eight. That's all I'm going to say, just to the Hateful Eight. This is the opposite. This is the anti that. Our next movie is what, Jasper?
This is the Hateful Eight from 2015. In the dead of a Wyoming winter, a bounty hunter and his prisoner find shelter in a cabin currently inhabited by a collection of nefarious characters. This is, of course, directed by Quentin Tarantino, written by Quentin Tarantino, and it stars Samuel L. Jackson, Kurt Russell, Jason Leigh. I want to say this.
Lee.
Yep, Lee.
Lee. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Walton Goggins, Damian Berkshire. I want to say that's probably wrong as hell. Tim Roth, of course, Michael Madsen, Bruce Dern, James Parks, and Zoe Bell.
I think you're missing somebody.
Nah, I don't want to mention Mr. Tatum.
What? Why not? What's wrong with Channing Tatum? Wow.
I always get his name confused because there's an actress out there called Tatum Channing.
Is there really?
Yes.
Maybe they're the same. It's just a trick. It's a trick they've been playing on us.
It's a drag.
Oh, the Hateful Eight. Okay. We should also mention, I do believe we all watched the extended cut of this?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Matt, had you ever seen Hateful Eight before? And what are your initial impressions?
Prior to this, I saw the original Hateful Eight, and I watched it when it first came out back in 2015. And I've seen so much different stuff since then that I kind of forgot a few things.
Mm-hmm. So
going back watching it, I started again like watching the Magnificent Seven, going down memory lane of, oh hey, yeah, I remember that. And then of course we watched the extended edition, so there was a lot of stuff that I was like, I don't remember it being this long. Why is there a 3-minute sequence of establishing that we're in Wyoming and there's a big freaking snowstorm coming? And why are we looking at this cross with Jesus Christ on it?
That is the one thing that I recognize as like, that's different.
But yeah, impressions, it's Quentin Tarantino doing a Western. Not nearly as bloody as Kill Bill, but definitely bloody.
Jasper, how about you?
I had not seen this movie before. I remember the opening scene for some reason. I don't know, one of my brothers was watching it or something.
Oh, you had not seen The Hateful Eight?
No.
Oh, I thought you had.
No, I think I might have said I watched it, but I think it was actually the Magnificent Seven I had watched.
Okay.
So
I got you. So did you watch?
I got the numbers mixed me up. Sorry.
Well, I mean, that's why we did it. That should have been my segue.
Concussion.
The Magnificent 7 + 1 equals the Hateful Eight. Okay, well, Jasper, did you watch the regular version or did you watch the extended version?
I watched the extended version.
Okay. Oh, interesting, for your first watch. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I have seen this before, and, well, I thought Jasper had seen this, and I knew, Matt, you had seen it, so I was like, well, let's do the extended version, because if we'd all seen the regular cut, and if I'm going to dedicate another, like, almost 3 hours or so to this movie, I might as well go all the way and watch the 4-hour extended cut. Plus, I was curious. But yeah, I mean, I like this movie. I like it. It is a Western. It's more Western-y than Django, which Tarantino says is not a Western, it's a Southern. But it's essentially like, if this was a TV show, this is just a big, long bottle episode. It's you throw all these characters into one room, boom, there's your episode. And I mean, there's some stuff outside. There's the you know, the whole setup with them in the carriage, but for the most part, it is a single location movie. So it's plenty of time of Tarantino doing what Tarantino does, and that's writing characters sitting around eating and talking.
Yeah, it's definitely a bottle episode, and it goes from one bottle to another bottle. You go from the stagecoach to a layover room.
Definitely. And the one shot I remember seeing that I was like, well, that's definitely not in the regular cut, is that first shot that you mentioned with the very long, very prolonged opening shot of the crucifix and the snow. And I mean, I think it's a cool shot. I think it's super neat, but it does really go on for a long time. But also, for the most part, I don't remember like a lot of new material, but everything does definitely seem like it takes longer. That ride from the opening to getting to the cabin seems like it's much longer in this. Although I couldn't point to any specific thing of like, well, they talked about this more, or this is different. It's just everything seems longer. It seems more drawn out. And I do want to comment on the format. Like, technically, this isn't a movie. The way Netflix has it, because it's not like the straight extended cut that Tarantino toured around, the 70 millimeter print or whatever that he toured around, because they broke it into 4 episodes, and it's even got credits at the end of each episode. So it's essentially a mini series. However, I feel like just doing that format made it easier for me to digest, and I sat through the whole thing in one sitting, and I didn't mean to, but every time the quote unquote episode would end, I'd be like, well, I want to watch the next one now.
Exactly how I felt. Like, I felt like this is like how I kind of want to watch a movie that's going to be that long. Should do this all the time. Like, I mean, I know we can't do that, but
it's such a weird psychological trick, though, right? Because I mean,
yeah, it made you want more as soon as that episode was over.
You know, I think I'll be the third one voting for that. I like how they broke it up like that. And yeah, you're right. It totally, like, next thing I know, the episode was over, and I'm like, it's been 59 minutes. I want more. And of course, it also kind of nice because I can't sit through a 2-hour movie without having to get up at least once to use the facilities or something. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of nice to be able to, oh, hey, break, great.
Yeah. I mean, it's honestly, it's something I kind of suspected, and this kind of proved it. But it's like, it's the idea of like, it helps that TV series got so good. Like, there's a lot of good TV shows, so that kind of helps the whole binge thing that became so popular, binging shows. But it's that whole debate of like, Melanie used to like make fun of me because she likes watching movies, and I wasn't watching a lot of movies just because we were watching TV shows. But I would scroll through Netflix, and I'd be like, I don't want to watch that movie. It's too long. It's like 2 hours long. And then let's just watch an episode, and then spend like 3 hours watching a TV series. It's that whole thing, right? And it's such a weird trick. It's pretty interesting. Because if this was continuous, like, it wouldn't quite be 4 hours, but it'd be real close to 4 hours long. I think it'd be real hard to sit through. But the fact that they throw those credits in there, I don't know what the difference is. Made it much easier.
Now, I got to ask you, did you, and I did this, I noticed with the latest update I got from Netflix, but you can now skip through the opening credit sequences.
Mm-hmm.
Did you skip through them?
No.
Oh, okay. Because I just after watching the episode, I can't sit in there and watch the recap and then watch the credit sequence go over again. I mean, I was like 3 minutes in.
Mine automatically skipped it for me.
Mine automatically skipped the recaps. I don't think it played the recaps for me.
Yeah, mine would just be like, and now you're 4 minutes in.
I don't know. Maybe it's the platform we watched it on, or because we just kept letting it roll. So it's like, we're not even going to ask. We know. We know your habits. We know your dirty watching habits. Okay, let's talk about the movie itself. How does this compare for you guys to amongst Tarantino's movies? I enjoy this movie, and there's parts of it I enjoy quite a bit, but as a whole, I don't feel like it's his strongest.
I would say that. I mean, to me, it was kind of a callback to Reservoir Dogs.
Oh, that's a real good point.
You know, where they're kind of in the one room.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's how you find out what the story is, and then right there at the end, it tells you how it all got set up. I mean, I love the acting, but it started to lose me a little bit. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's the strongest outing.
It's interesting in terms of Tarantino movies because it's unmistakably Tarantino. The dialogue, like a lot of his movies, you hear it. It's just the kind of the attitude, and at a certain point, it does go full Tarantino, where Tarantino himself starts narrating over the movie, which is such a weird decision. And it's so like, I mean, it's not trying to not take you out of the movie, right? It just takes you right out.
Was there another Tarantino movie where he came in and did a narration thing? I have like an inkling that he did that somewhere before. Or maybe I'm just thinking that he was telling a story in the movie. I'm not sure.
It's not uncommon for him to randomly bring a narrator into the movie, like 3/4 of the way through the movie, but I don't think it's ever been him. Like in Inglourious Bastards, for example, randomly Samuel L. Jackson narrates one scene, but I don't believe it's actually ever been Tarantino himself. But I feel like that's just his way of getting his cameo in. Otherwise, he'd have to play one of the characters in that room.
Right. It was definitely a way to kind of move the narrative to show it from another angle, which I thought was an interesting way to do it.
Yeah, I would agree. I've read criticisms that it's kind of a lazy plot device to like move it forward quickly, but I don't feel like that's the case. I felt like it was used to add intrigue to it. You know, I don't feel like it's a con. It doesn't take away from the movie from me. If anything, it signals like, hey, the movie's going to start moving now, because it just hangs about. But that said, like, I find the scenario intriguing enough through most of the movie that I'm not bored by it. Even this extended cut, I wasn't bored by it. The characters they are hateful. They're all despicable. Well, except for, what's his name? The driver. And it doesn't pan out well for him. They're all despicable characters, but they're interesting. Kurt Russell's character is annoying, though. I would hate to be stuck in anywhere with him for days.
Oh man, he's got to be the quintessential racist cowboy bounty hunter,
right? Yeah.
You know, it's like if Jack Burton was a super.
And you know, I guess, you know, slight spoilers. He wasn't wrong, but he's up in everyone's business before he even really knows there's any reason to be suspicious. But I guess the idea he's just always suspicious, and clearly he has reason to be. Daisy, them being chained together, and like a lot of times if it wasn't the fact that he was beating on her most of the time, and they're almost cozied up like a couple most of the movie, and I think that's a really interesting dynamic to where he's literally like, he's a bounty hunter. He beats the crap out of her, and he's going to have her hung, but they've got to be like coupled up for this whole movie. I don't know. It's an interesting dynamic.
Did you ever see the movie Overboard?
Yes.
Oh God, that movie.
If you could take Goldie Hawn and just put her in the role of Janet Lee.
Jennifer Jason Lee.
That's it. Yes. Honestly, it's like, I think the subtext of them being like almost like a couple. Yeah. You know, like an old married couple. It's like, okay, I could see this being like Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn going on vacation somewhere and arguing the entire time. You know, there's a movie right there. But then on top of that, it's set in a Western and he's beating the crap out of her because, yeah, there's definitely a subtext in there that they're more like an old married couple than they are bounty hunter and his bounty. And not the quicker picker upper kind.
What do you guys think of the racial aspect of this? Because man, a lot of this movie to me feels like Tarantino giving everyone who criticized Django the middle finger, and not just for the racial stuff. Because between that and the violence, those are the two things that Tarantino gets criticized for that with every movie. And Django was a big one, like that people really came after him about. And I feel like he just then was like, well, screw you guys, and just leaned into it as hard as he could with this one.
Oh man, you're probably going to edit this entire thing I'm going to say next, but the whole sequence when Sam Jackson is talking about the Confederate soldier's son.
Mm-hmm.
Oh Lord!
I'm like, man, that is Tarantino just telling all the critics to just go blow him, because you got the most popular and well-known black actor in America basically getting a blowjob from a racist white Southern Confederate soldier. It's like, yeah, that's
and it's detailed, and like it's not even that he's just telling the story. Flashback, you see this happen.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like something that just amused Tarantino or something that like really benefited the story. It felt like a message, not just to racists, but also to maybe people who, yeah, like you said, critics and people who criticize him for things. It seemed like a message to everybody.
Yeah.
Like, shut up, go suck Samuel.
Oh. And trust me, saying all that, I was editing and trying to keep it as clean as possible.
So, Jasper,
Yeah.
tell us more about your thoughts on this movie. I'm super. If you hadn't, so you hadn't actually seen this before. I'm super curious as to like what you thought about it, because it is long.
Again, I wasn't really, when we watched Reservoir Dogs, I wasn't really sold on like staying in that whole room or that one room the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's enough going on in this movie to really keep it going. Of course, the story being a big part of it. And I think the thing that really drew me to it was Samuel's acting. He's kind of like the centerpiece, even though Kurt Russell is kind of like trying to drive the bus there. But I really like Samuel. And then, I guess, like he was saying, that scene where he was talking about the Confederate general's son, it was just intense. Like,
Okay, so what do you guys think about that anyway? Do you think that story was true at all? Like, I mean, in the context of the story, or do you think he was just trying to do what he did, and that was rile up the Bruce Dern character to grab that gun?
I almost feel like it was true in the story, in the context of the story.
Yeah, I'm with Jasper on that. I so want it to be true because, just looking at history, and how much hate was in the South, and during the Reconstruction period. And okay, so maybe I'm getting a little too teacherly, teacherly. Yes,
Do it.
but I can totally see someone who has been through the war, was on the South Side, having to now from their viewpoint kowtow to a Union soldier who was a black man who he fought against, totally going out there and saying, you know what, there's a bounty on this man, I'm gonna go get him.
The thing that kind of got me with like trying to think it was real was where he said the worst thing he told me that is he was your son. Like he was gonna make him pay for his dad's sins, basically.
Mm-hmm. It strikes me as real in that case, but it's hard to say because he could have just been riling him up.
Mm-hmm.
Either way, I don't know. It works. I kind of like we don't get a definitive on that, and maybe I'm completely off base, and we're just supposed to assume it's real.
Okay, with that in mind, talking about things that were real and not real, how did you feel when you found out that the Abraham Lincoln letter wasn't real?
See, my thing with that was there is a lot of like spins in this movie that I didn't even see coming. He's just like, yeah, it was a lie. And I was like, what?
It amuses me how much it hurt the Kurt Russell character, but I think it's one of those things where it's more like hurt his pride. You feel stupid for believing it, but it is interesting because that follows immediately this whole story and him shooting Bruce Dern, and it goes right into that. And it's the Samuel character kind of takes a turn in general where he's just like, it's not like he was necessarily a good guy or a bad guy to begin with. And it's not like this even necessarily makes him a good guy or a bad guy. But he definitely takes a turn where it's like, oh, this character can be just as nasty as everyone else. And it's like he hits a point where he's like, okay, it's time to stop playing nice with all of these people. I'm going to shoot this guy, everybody's going to hear this crazy story I got. And then, the one guy outs the letter as being fake, and he's just like, yeah, I don't care. It makes white people feel better. Grow up, It's interesting. It's interesting.
I gotta say, for me, it was kind of disheartening, because I can totally see Abraham Lincoln writing the letter to numerous black soldiers during Civil War, because there was like a whole regiment of African American soldiers that fought for the Union, and I could totally see him wanting to write to those soldiers, thanking them for standing up and doing their duty as newly American soldiers, and then finding out that it was a complete lie. I felt for the Kurt Russell character at that moment, and it's like, yeah, now I can definitely see why each character is titled a Hateful Eight character in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
So, like Jasper said, it was definitely one of those, holy cow, a quick turn moment that you didn't see coming.
Well, and for Kurt Russell, it is like, I guess the driver's still there, but it's the closest person to a friend he had in there. The Samuel L. Jackson character was, and obviously like one of the only people in there he trusted. So I guess there is element of that, of like being betrayed, and it's like, well, okay, I got nobody on my side here, but like nobody in that building has anybody on their side. Well, I guess that's not true. Daisy does. She's got lots of people on her side.
Yeah.
What do you guys think of her character? I know anytime there's violence against women in movies, people get upset, but I know that was a point of contention with people, was just like the abuse her character gets.
Yeah, it is interesting, because being raised in a certain decade, I have a viewpoint where, you shouldn't hurt women, never hurt women. But yet the character, I think you gotta step away from it and not look at her as a female character, but look at her as an evil character, whether she was a man or a woman. If it was a dude hitting another dude, not a problem, because of all the yeah, I honestly don't know where I'm going with this.
No, well, I get it, because to me, it doesn't. This is gonna sound horrible. It doesn't bother me in this case. Like,
she's gonna die at the end of the movie, whether it's by hanging or by getting shot. She's a bad person, so her getting beat up throughout the movie doesn't really give you as much of a visceral feel if, say, it was Sharon Tate.
Well, yeah, and like it's also the way her character handles it. She at no point comes across as an abused woman or an exploited woman. She, like everyone else, she's just like a nasty character, and obviously it hurts her character to get hit, but like it's not like she's a beaten down woman or anything. She's, what's the word? What would they say in the West? A nasty vermin, but just like every other character in that building. And when she gets hit, like it pisses her off, but like she's, I don't know, like it's just the way she handles it makes a big difference. And she's not really a sympathetic character at any point. She doesn't play it to try to get sympathy from any of the other characters or the audience, and the movie doesn't play it to give her sympathy. I kind of feel like it's definitely people being overly sensitive, but maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know.
I have to agree with you. And you know what? She can take a hit, which is funny. Kurt Russell's character just cold cocks her right in the face, and then she turns around and spits on the Abraham Lincoln letter. Yeah, she can take a hit. And I'm like, okay, this is one tough hombre. Hombreo.
We'll go with hombre.
Yeah.
But no, that's exactly it. She takes a hit, and she gives crap back. Yeah, I don't know. Probably not worth spending as much time on it as we are. Okay, so the ending, though, because that's the thing. Like, this movie, I enjoy the bulk of this movie. I like the setting. It is in this one setting, but I feel like for this entire runtime, they managed to keep that one small setting pretty interesting looking visually. Like, there's some amazing shots in there. Like, there's just like what is that little section with the chains hanging down? all the outside stuff looks really nice, but all the inside stuff still looks just as nice. The lighting is super dynamic. It's incredibly well shot for being in one location for so long. It keeps my attention. However, I think what separates this from a potentially much lower rating is how insane the ending is. It goes like over the top horror movie gore. It turns it up to 11. As soon as people start violently vomiting blood in other people's faces, it's just like depraved. It's so insane. How do you guys feel about the end of this movie?
You go first, Jasper, because I got to collect my thoughts on this one.
When he shot Bob the Mexican, his head just exploded. I was like, what? Like, okay. But then the thing that got me was when Channing shoots him through the floor. That kind of, I was like, okay, whoa, okay, hello, like this whole time, because I remember seeing Channing Tatum's name, like, where is he at in this movie? And then right as I thought that, there he is. I knew too when he was on top of her, he was going to throw up in her face. I was like, no, don't do it,
She ends up covered in just the nastiest chunks of gore by the end of this.
Yeah, it's just horrendous. Absolutely horrendous.
Major spoilers for everything, listener. When Channing Tatum, and you could tell as soon as he comes up and he looks at her and he smiles, you're like, nope, he's done. His face explodes on her, and it's just chunks of brain in her mouth, all over her. She's drenched in blood and gore. And then she like hacks off dead Kurt Russell's arm. And by the time the other two guys, like, and this whole last section is still also like, there's still lots of dialogue and stuff that happens. It goes on for quite a while, but they're hanging her, like Samuel L. Jackson and the other guy, Walter Goggins is the actor name, Chris Mannix, the sheriff, are pulling her up, to hang her from the rafters of this place. She's got a severed arm still chained to her wrist. They're bleeding out. She's covered in blood. And what do they say? Something about like I want to watch her squirm, or I want to watch her hang, or something like that. Like, it's so twisted. I forgot how bonkers it goes.
It's funny because the ending is just like standing at the water cooler watching two people try to one-up themselves.
Yeah.
It starts off, okay, you're going to shoot the Bob the Mexican or Marco the Mexican, depending on,
Yeah.
And so his head gets blown up. The English guy, he gets a gut shot. The sheriff gets a gut shot. Sam Jackson gets his pecker blown off. It's just like, just boom, one after the other. Just right after the whole vomiting blood scene, it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Like, how can we top ourselves on the next one? Which made it kind of interesting. And I gotta say, you had mentioned earlier that it seemed like nobody had a friend in that room. Towards the end there were two friends, and they were just completely did not see that coming with Sheriff Mannix and Sam Jackson's character. Like, right at the end, they became kind of like friends because the crazy lady was trying to cut a deal, and she was talking to the sheriff. She's like, well, hold on, let me listen to her out. And I mean, this long spiel, like maybe 5 minutes of dialogue, trying to turn the Sam Jackson character in, shoot him, let's get out of there, I'll save you, whatever. And then at the very end, after he hears it all, he's like, no. And you can just see like that change, that like Sam Jackson's like, oh, okay, well, this racist MF is on my side.
Yeah. But that line, by the way, is as Daisy's being hung, Samuel L. Jackson's character says, hold on, Daisy, I want to watch. I was like, oh my God. But that whole, like, the insanity of that whole end thing, that's when it really occurred to me, like, this is just a big FU to everybody that was upset about the racial slurs and the violence in Django and pretty much all of his movies. And, I mean, you're right. It is, at the end, the two closest to being friends at that point are the extremely, Samuel Jackson's character, who doesn't care much for white folk, and the extremely racist former Confederate soldier guy, as they're in this horribly gory scene, hanging a bloodied woman with a severed arm attached to her wrist. Like, it's just, that's when I was like, this is just him being like, I don't care about anything you guys say. Jasper, we'll start with you this time. Rating on The Hateful Eight. What do you give this?
I'm going with a 4.
Oh, okay.
Going 4. I liked it, and I think breaking it down this way was kind of cool. So I'm giving it a 4.
How about you, Matt?
You know, after taking this time to look over the series again and think about it, my scores changed because Jasper pointed out a few things to me, and this movie has a lot of what I liked about Tarantino movies. It had a lot of, like, the Reservoir Dogs. It had Pulp Fiction. It had the crazy gore scenes of Kill Bill that are just, you know, so outlandish that they're almost laughable. And I think I'm going to change my score from a 3.75 to a 4.25.
You had to, huh? You just had to do it. Yeah, okay. You listened to the show. I could tell. So 4 stars is what you're saying?
4 stars.
Not everyone gets special Mike Wood treatment, okay? One guest gets to pull that joke, and he ruins it for everyone else.
Oh man, I gotta come up with a sweet picture to send to you.
All right, no,
where can I find it?
I don't really want to assume your rating. Are you really falling around 4?
Yeah. Oh. I'm falling on 4. I went from 3.5 to 4.
Okay.
So
nice try, though, dude. I knew it. I kind of suspected you were going to try to pull something the first movie rating. I knew somebody.
No. I give me this false sense of security and...
Well played. Start calling you Matt Dormammu or Dorm. How do they say it?
Dormammu? What?
Not Dormammu.
No? Okay.
Daisy Dormammu.
Did you see? Also, I kind of looked this up after the movie, as people caught this. The snowshoes look like wings behind her when she's getting hanged.
I don't know that I caught that.
Yeah,
I like it though.
I didn't catch that.
Yeah, this is a fantastically shot movie. Like, there's, like I was saying, clearly, like, even though most of it's one setting, there's so much thought put into the visual aspect of it, and it looks great.
You know, and we did not address the fact that the place is called Minnie's Haberdashery.
It's a haberdashery.
And do you guys know what a haberdashery is?
Yeah, it's a hat.
Yeah, they make hats. I'm like...
But you're not allowed to wear a hat in there.
Yeah.
And there are no hats anywhere.
They don't sell hats. Yeah.
I'm going to go with 4 stars on The Hateful Eight. I enjoyed it quite a bit. And actually, out of curiosity, since I have logged every movie I've watched for years in Letterboxd, I looked up what I initially gave it when I first watched it back in 2016 or something. And I was at 4.5 for the regular cut. So I actually went down half a star. And I don't know if it's because of the extended cut or if it's just coming off of literally watching every Tarantino movie prior. But in terms of its place in Tarantino movies, obviously 4 stars is a pretty strong rating. It's interesting, and you have a good point. It has a lot of the Tarantino stuff I like, but it's also, and I don't think this is a detriment at all, it's missing some of the more flashy Tarantino isms, but I think that kind of works for it. And the score, I didn't mention the score, is awesome. Much more traditional than the usual Tarantino score, yet not, because for the most part, it's unused score by, what's his name?
You know, I gotta say, funny how you mentioned the score, because I didn't really pay attention to the music. I got sucked in so much that the music was just kind of like incidental to the story.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that kind of works, because when you watch a movie where like the score just kind of like is loud and obnoxious, it kind of pulls you out of what's going on.
Legendary, iconic composer Ennio Morricone, but this was unused score from The Thing, the movie The Thing. But right, and there's parts of it you can tell, like I can hear it, It's obviously very different than most of the music that actually got used in The Thing, but this was written for The Thing or around that time period and never got used. But speaking of, like, you know, iconic Westerns, he did The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly score. Wah, 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 wah. Okay, I'm way off tune on that, but
Yeah.
it's late. My voice has been funky this whole episode anyway. But, you know, he did all the like Clint Eastwood spaghetti westerns. So that's obviously where Tarantino keyed into him, like the connection there. But yeah, I like the score a lot, and it was written for The Thing, so it makes sense.
Talk about another wintry bottled episode.
Exactly. There are actually quite a few parallels to The Thing. Them all being bottled up during the winter, being stuck by a blizzard, not knowing who they can trust. They're in a room full of people, and some of them might be the others, like the bad ones. They can't trust, like none of them can really trust any of the other ones. Like, yeah, there's a lot of parallels there.
Oh man, and it's got Kurt Russell in a beard.
You're right. Oh my God. How did I not even think about Kurt Russell?
Mind blown.
I mean, it'd be very different, but switch out Samuel L. Jackson for this. Maybe that's racist to say. No, it's not. There's only one black character here. Switch out Samuel L. Jackson. You can't switch out Bruce Dern for Keith David, okay?
No.
Switch out Samuel for Keith David, and you've basically got a prequel or something to The Thing.
Oh man, hold on. I gotta change my GCU mashup.
Right? Cinematic Universe is changing all of a sudden. Okay, I don't know how I'm going to edit all that together. That really rambled around, but point is 4 stars. Moving on. Let's see. What are we combining here? Okay. Hey, gentlemen. The movie studios are looking to do some westerns, but they don't want something too gritty, but they also don't want something too
sanitized,
family friendly. So they think maybe if they combine a really nasty, gritty movie with a relatively clean movie, they can come up with the ideal number Western universe. How would you combine this Hateful Eight and the Magnificent Seven in a numerical themed Western universe?
The Nasty Nine.
Who wants to go first on this guy? I don't know why it's a guy. It is.
Before I jump on this, did they establish when the Magnificent Seven happened? Was it after the Civil War or before the Civil War? Because I don't remember them saying anything about that.
That's a real good question.
I don't remember anyone saying anything, so I'm just going to throw this out there, but in my headcanon, this comes after the Civil War.
I think it actually might. Yes, because the guy... Oh, that's the 2016 one. I can't imagine they changed it too much, but maybe they did. Well, we're going to go ahead and say it is. At least in the 2016 one, and I can't imagine they changed it too much, but maybe they did. The one character that's like become a coward, but he obviously has some like PTSD kind of fear issue going on.
Yeah.
And I could be wrong. Maybe that's from like one of the weird like War of 1812, but I kind of assume that was from the Civil War.
Okay.
But I'm not positive on that.
Well, in my headcanon, I'm going to say it comes after. Any objections?
Nope.
Cool. So everything that happened in the Magnificent Seven stays, as usual. Same with the Hateful Eight. But what we learn is that Bob, or the Mexican Marcos, is a surviving member of the Calavera group.
Oh, I love it. Okay.
And he actually hooked up with the Channing Tatum's, or Tatum Channing, I can never remember how his pronunciation was, his band of Marauders. And so several years after the Magnificent Seven happens, Hateful Eight happens. And Vin and Chris, the Yul Brynner and the Steve McQueen characters from the Magnificent Seven are out hunting down the last of the Calavera clan. And they find out that several of them have joined up with, what's her names? Dupree, whatever band.
Oh,
Dormammu?
No, Dormagoo. Dormagoo.
Yeah, the Dormagu clan. So they go. Well, last we heard they were heading off to Red Rock, and so Ben and Chris happen to come across Minnie's haberdashery, and they find the sole survivor, a sheriff of Red Rock, Chris Mannix, and they manage to patch him up and ask him what happened here, and he explains everything that happened, and that's when they find out that, hey, Mexican Marco, the guy that has no head over here, is part of Calavera's old clan. So we should move on to Red Rock and get this guy back where he belongs. So then they show up at Red Rock, and sure enough, there's the rest of the Domague clan. The what do they say, 40 men that they had.
Yep.
And let's say about 10 of them are from Calavera's clan. So the sheriff's got to clean up the town, and he enlists Vin and Chris's help to get rid of the Domague clan and Calavera guys. And then there's this huge battle at the end of the show where there's just blood and gunshots and gun smoke, and for some odd reason, there's this little Asian guy in the corner holding a samurai sword.
Oh.
Okay. Okay, I like that. Is that how it ends? It ends on this samurai sword guy?
Yep.
Oh my god. So I love it, and I have no cinematic universe now because your end of it was basically what I had, except for not the very end. I didn't have the samurai sword guy. I love that. That's just like a nod. That's a knowing nod. Oh, that's great. Yeah, so mine was basically played on the idea that, that bluff that Daisy was, or they didn't ever reveal it to be a bluff or not, when she said, there's a gang of 40 men in the town, and as soon as they figure out what's going on here, they're going to ransack the town. And that's the pretty obvious setup for, we're going to get, what were their names? They were, you said it, Chris and Vin?
Yeah, Chris and Vin.
So I'll say, to make it different enough, after that, we'll even come in on a character that nobody knows. Like, we'll start with a character in the town, the one who, winter's over, the gang goes out to the cabin and sees like their leaders are all dead and stuff. So then they decide to go ransack the town and hang around. They're basically trying to take over the town. So we'll follow some new character to go recruit people. Unfortunately for him, he comes across a couple of gunslingers who have a familiar history with a situation like this, and it's of course Chris and Vin. And I guess the fun could be like who they recruit. Maybe they come across, oh god, I wish he hadn't died in Django. I was gonna tie Django into it. That's cheating. But maybe they'll come across a African American couple, and the guy's got a bad attitude, but he's very familiar with killing white folks, and so he joins up. They join up with them, so we get a little Django action in there. And I say couple because can't leave the wife out, Broomhilda. I wish Christoph Waltz is going to be in it as a new character because he should just be in all these things.
Ooh. Christoph Waltz could be Tim Roth's brother.
Ooh, God, yes, that's good. Oh, I like that. Now we're spitballing. And there were...
He was tapped to play Tim Roth's character.
Was he?
Yeah, but Quentin wanted Tim Roth to play it.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, he likes working with Tim Roth. And it makes also then again has that tie back to Reservoir Dogs, which I'm so glad you mentioned because that had not even occurred to me. And then also they're going to find an Asian man to join the crew. But he'll be kind of the oddball, not because of the racial thing, but because he doesn't use guns. He uses swords. But he's deadly with those swords. So yeah, that's it. That's all I got. It's basically just Magnificent Seven again, except with the tangentially tied to Django and Hateful Eight. Jasper, what do you got, man?
See, mine was hard because I was going to say it would be cool if everybody was still basically alive. But I thought a really cool one would be the Magnificent Seven trying to take the town from the Hateful Eight.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
Like just a knockout, drag out fight. You know what I'm saying? Like just.
Would it basically be like? Are you saying for whatever reason, like the characters, even though they all hate each other of Hateful Eight,
to survive, they would band together.
They band together. Okay, yes. Interesting. Yeah. I like that. That's fun. See, that's where it gets tricky with movies where the majority, if not the entire cast, is murdered. You know, like, what do you do?
Yeah, everybody's dead pretty much. So
that Jasper's yours feels like a what if scenario, which I like a lot. It's like, well, what if? And then you just come up with something, I don't know, some wacky thing, and it feels like it would have to be like a miscommunication issue. Mm-hmm. So that like the Magnificent Seven know that these bad dudes are in the cabin. I'm sorry, I'm just taking over your universe.
No, you're good.
I'm filling it in. So they find out these bad dudes are in the cabin, like the gang. So that's why they were hired to take them out. So that's why they're attacking the cabin. But all the, like, for example, you know, Samuel L. Jackson, the sheriff. I always mix the actor names with the character names. And Kurt Russell, like, they're not bad dudes, but all they know is they're being attacked from outside. So that's why they all band together.
Right.
Tarantino likes to do alternate histories. We do alternate histories of Tarantino's histories.
Which will only just get us more in trouble. But, you know.
And we're going to switch out. You know what? I'm going to continue by trend. Let's switch out the Magnificent Seven actors with the Hateful Eight actors.
Okay. I'm on board.
I'm going to say Samuel L. Jackson is the Yul Brynner character.
I'm on board.
Okay. Who will Kurt Russell play?
I still want to put him as a Steve McQueen character. No, he could be the guy that doesn't know that there's not a mine in the
Yes, perfect. Right. Michael Madsen should be Charles Bronson just because they both kind of have gnarly faces.
They have the voice.
And who's going to be Holtz, the young kid?
I want to say Channing Tatum.
Oh, God, you're right. That's perfect. Bruce Dern could be the James Coburn character. I don't know why. I'm losing. This premise has lost its appeal to me, but so I'm losing steam.
He's going down, Captain.
And Jennifer Jason Leigh is who is left?
Oh, the shell shocked.
That's it.
Yeah,
you're right. What was he? Was he Calavera or Lee? Lee, I think.
Yeah.
All right. We don't have to keep this going on. This bit is it's floundering a little bit. That's okay.
Hey, I'm gonna throw this out to you real quick, but
yeah.
So the sheriff in the Hateful Eight, his name was Chris Mannix.
Yes.
Okay, plays a sheriff. So in the 1960s, there's a TV show called Mannix, and the main character's name was Joe Mannix, and he was a private investigator.
Mm-hmm.
Could he be the great grandson of Chris Mannix, the sheriff?
Yeah, probably. I mean, if Django has the great grandmother of, like, Shaft, because her last name is Von Shaft, sure. No, so you know what? In Tarantino's mind, though, it probably is. Mannix, there's no way that's an accident. That's totally his time period of television.
So there you go. We got a little 60s reboot crossover.
Oh, yeah. Well, I guess that's it, guys. But this feels like quite the show. This feels like quite the show.
It's been fun. I've enjoyed this.
Good. I appreciate you joining us on this episode. I'm glad to be able to get you into one of the... I was really hoping to get you on one of these Tarantino episodes, and I'm glad we finally did.
Yay!
Woo!
All right, one more time. Do you want to tell people where they can find your stuff?
Sure. You can find me on Twitter at 60s Reboot, where I tweet about anything and everything that's not political. And then if you want to listen to my show, which is the 60s Reboot podcast, you can find it on the EMC network. Also, it's at emcpod.net/60s Reboot.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I know that doesn't roll off the tongue. We'll try to get you something better.
Honestly, it's better than Blogspot, blog. And it's my exclusive podcast for the EMC network, or the EMC Electronic Media Collective Podcast Network.
It's a mouthful, man.
It's a mouthful. And then if you want to listen to my show with my kids and I as we review comic books, it's comicswithmykids.blogspot.com. And both shows you can find on Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, and Castbox. But if you want to see all the information and check out everything, check out the emcpod.net.
Yeah, awesome. And like I said, we do have one more episode this season. We'll be discussing Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I don't know. Yeah, I'm guessing that episode will go. I missed the window of opportunity to jump on actually being irrelevant. But so that'll probably go up next, episode. And then, I don't know, I guess we'll take a little break. I mean, that's why we do seasons, right? So we can take a break once in a while. So I guess that's it for this episode. I, as always, have been Randall Sylvie. You can find me at Twitter at Randall Sylvie. And guess what? Sometimes they are political. However, if you want to avoid that stuff, follow us at GCU Podcast on Twitter. The most controversial we ever get on there is occasionally I tweet at movie theaters when they get their trivia, their Quentin Tarantino trivia wrong, because I don't care how many movies Tarantino says he's directed. He directed Death Proof. That counts. That counts as a movie. You don't know your trivia. Marcus Theaters. Or of course you can find more of these episodes at grawlixpodcast.com. It's GRAWLIX podcast.com, or Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Castbox, all the places. Jasper, what about you?
You can find me on Twitter at Coranzo Media, which is KORANSO Media, and soon to be on the Grawlix YouTube playing some games.
Ooh, really?
I can figure out some stuff. So.
Oh, you got a computer now. You're right.
Yeah. Apparently this mic is not that great, so I don't know if I want to start recording with that just yet.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. And once again, Matt, thanks for joining us. Look forward to having you on the show again.
I look forward to being here. Like I said, I really enjoyed this. I hope to be able to podcast with you guys again.
Oh, it's going to happen. I swear.
Faux show.
I have not talked about it. It's fine. I'm angry about it. Okay, I'm not gonna lie. I'm a little upset. But it's cool. I'm being friendly. We're friends. I like you.
Doesn't make me feel like you do.
What's your Jasper? We're friends. We're friends. I like you. What's your address again, by the way? How can I get to your house quickly now in the middle of the night? Well, after you're sleeping though.